Over the past 25 years, the body weight that Americans perceive to be ideal has steadily increased by over 10 pounds. Today, the average woman weighs 157 pounds, but would like to weigh 140 pounds, while the average man weighs 193 pounds, but would ideally weigh about 185 pounds. The trouble is, body weight gives us absolutely no indication of how much fat or how much muscle a person carries on their frame. This relative proportion is critical as it's related to our overall health and how our body moves and behaves, and how we look and feel aesthetically. I'm sure you've seen weight loss advertisements or even television series that showcase men and women who are able to lose hundreds of pounds over only a few weeks' time. The contestants step up onto a scale to show the audience how much weight they have lost each week, with success being weight loss and failure being little or no loss. But no one ever quantifies those losses. Do they lose fat? Or do they lose muscle too? For some people, tracking body weight is an appropriate tool to keep them on track with their goals. But for others, it may be misleading. For example, in my research, in addition to tracking body weight, we also often track muscle mass and fat mass changes. We track these before, during, and after an exercise and nutritional intervention of several weeks or months. One of the most glaring examples of weighing misuse was when a participant, an overweight, middle-aged woman, came to me and told me she was going to drop out of the program because she was having no results. This was a total shock because I had personally measured her success in the study. She had improved her upper and lower body strength and had increased her ability to complete high-intensity cardiovascular exercise. She told me she was feeling better than she had in the past 10 years, and a blood chemistry panel showed that her cardiovascular and metabolic health was improving too. As far as body composition, she had steadily lost fat mass and gained muscle during her first 6 weeks working out with us. She was an absolute image of success. But what did her scale read? Failure. The only metric she had used to determine her progress was body weight. Despite her belief that her clothes fit better and that her belt needed to be tightened, and that she was getting compliments from her family and friends about her physique, she didn't care, because the number on the scale had not yet changed. You see, she had lost several pounds of body fat, but also gained a near equal amount of muscle. So she weighed exactly the same, despite the fact that the composition of the weight had changed dramatically. And this is the point. How can we better quantify success with weight management? After this lecture, you will have a better, healthier idea of what's happening to your body during weight loss, what benchmarks are typically used to indicate success, and why success goes far beyond simply what the scale tells you. We'll start with a concept called body mass index, often abbreviated as BMI. Now, BMI compares your body weight in kilograms to your height in meters squared. A note of caution here. Measures like BMI or body weight may be relevant only in certain situations. The usefulness of BMI is not great when considered on an individual-to-individual basis. In practice, BMI is most appropriate for large sample populations, like considering the status of a state or a country, or in clinical situations to quantify the risk for a patient who was clearly overweight and overfat at the same time. So if you are the same height as your best friend and you weigh a bit more, you will also have a slightly higher BMI. And BMI assumes any extra weight is due to greater fat weight. So in this case, your higher BMI is associated with more negative health outcomes. But as we've already discussed, that may be a problem with this measure. Let me explain. There are 4 main categories of BMI, which again is your weight in kilograms divided by your height in meters squared. Underweight, which is less than 18.5, normal weight, which is 18.5 to 24.9, overweight, which is 25 to 29, and obese, which is classified as a BMI over 30. Research has consistently shown a positive association between a high BMI and a greater risk of cardiovascular, pulmonary, and metabolic disease. If you are curious about your own body mass index, calculate it, or look online for a free website that can give you the information. The trouble is that BMI, once again, only considers your body weight and body height, and does not account for the proportion of muscle mass or fat mass, which is the composition of your body weight. Take, for example, a typical NFL running back. These men are very strong and have lots of lean muscle mass and very little body fat. They are professional athletes and do not look overweight or overfat. Most will have a 6-pack of abs. Assuming this running back is just about 6 feet tall and a touch over 230 pounds due to all of his muscle mass, his BMI would be over 31 kilograms per meter squared. According to the BMI standards I just mentioned, our professional, healthy, lean athlete would be considered obese, even though common sense tells us otherwise. And if you calculate BMI for the average US woman, she is 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighs 156 pounds, and subsequently has a BMI of 25.2, which, as you now know, is considered overweight. This example demonstrates that certain measures like BMI or body weight may be relevant only in certain situations. Let's move on to better measures, measures of body composition, which is different from body weight and body mass index. As you now know, body composition is the relationship between the different types of tissue that comprise your body. In other words, how much muscle and how much fat make up your body weight. So if you compare yourself again to your friend of equal height and you weigh more, but we know that the extra weight is from increased muscle mass, this likely indicates better health despite a higher BMI. To account for fat-free mass, and not just total body weight, the fat-free mass index was developed. It is similar to BMI, but it takes your fat-free mass or muscle mass, again in kilograms, divided by your height in meters squared. This index can quantify your body composition more accurately when you know that you have extra weight that is mostly from muscle. It is not always a better index, but it is a different index. And like any index, will be more or less useful depending on the specific need of the information. While the fat-free mass index is not used nearly as much as body mass index, a few research papers have attempted to come up with normal fat-free mass index values for men and women. A paper in 2002 in the International Journal of Obesity-Related Metabolic Disorders found the average fat-free mass index for young women is about 15 kilograms per meter squared, and for young men is 19 kilograms per meter squared. But keep in mind that these values change slightly after age 35, showing that fat mass is gained as we age, most likely due to a sedentary lifestyle. The number of options scientists have developed to better quantify fat and muscle indicates the importance of knowing them. Now, let's look at the specific reasons why these indices are important to consider, and more specific information about body fat and muscle. For starters, it can be helpful for knowing your health status and risk of certain kinds of diseases, like cardiovascular disease, pulmonary disease, and metabolic disease, like type 2 diabetes. It is well established that if you have a lot of fat deposition, particularly around your waist and belly, near your major organs, that your chance of developing these types of diseases increases dramatically. Secondly, knowing your current body composition gives you greater clarity about your starting point if you decide that you need a change. You will better be able to track your body's changes over time and have a bigger picture of success. Let's get a little bit more specific about body fat and muscle mass and what they're actually describing. In terms of body composition, your total body fat, including essential and storage body fat. Essential fat includes fat in your organs, such as your heart, liver, kidneys, intestines, muscles, and bone marrow. This type of fat is required for normal physiological functioning and is different greatly between men and women. In fact, it accounts for most of the major body fat differences between sexes. Women have around 12% essential fat compared to men who have about 3% essential fat. Why do you think women might have a bit more essential fat? Well, mostly due to their biological function for reproduction. Women need extra fat stores during pregnancy. Regardless of whether a woman has children or not, she will most often have slightly more fat than a man. For this reason, it is important not to compare your body fat percentage to friends of the opposite sex. Now, it is fun to get competitive with a friend or significant other, but realize that the optimal body fat percentage is vastly different between men and women. So, to reiterate, men have about 3% essential fat and women have about 12% essential fat. But these numbers are still drastically low. There's another type of fat that is also required for normal body function. And this is called storage fat, which is fat stored and it can be used for energy. It includes the visceral fat or deep fat around your organs and the fat just underneath your skin, which is called subcutaneous fat. Storage fat can insulate your body, helps to maintain body temperature, and provides vital protection for your organs. The amount of storage fat is more similar between men and women, usually just 2 to 3% higher in a woman. So, health issues come in when our storage fat becomes excessive. Body fat is important for supporting daily function and health, but excess amounts will contribute to overweight and overfat conditions. Okay, so the other component of body mass that is not made up of fat is called fat-free mass or lean body mass. These terms often are used interchangeably, however, they are technically different. Fat-free mass is only muscle mass that you have, while lean body mass also includes your muscle mass, bone mass, connective tissue like ligaments and tendons, your internal organs, and any essential fat stored in these tissues. In practice, body composition is often described as a two-compartment model, meaning fat mass and fat-free mass, or lean body mass. And if you know these values, it can help to avoid getting stuck in the rut of only measuring and talking about body weight. It will also give you much more information about your overall health. By now, you are probably saying to yourself, how much body fat should I have? Well, these standards have been established. Typically, body fat levels are broken into optimal health and optimal fitness. These terms are very similar, but in general, health refers to the optimal level for reduced risk of disease, and fitness takes it a step further to the optimal level for physical fitness. We should all strive for at least optimal health and then optimal fitness. For women, optimal health is a body fat range of 18 to 30%, and optimal fitness is 16 to 25%. For men, optimal health is 10 to 25%, and optimal fitness is 12 to 18%. Consider your own goals to determine which range you should fall into. Then the next step is to determine your current body composition. So, how do we measure body composition? Many methods of assessing body composition exist, including direct and indirect measurements. Direct measurements include the dissolution of the body and physical dissection, meaning to truly know your body composition, you will have to wait until after you have passed away and then donate your body to science. And this obviously is not a viable option. But lucky for us, multiple indirect methods are available to assess body composition and are fairly easy to get access to. One note though, because each method is indirect, each will have its own inherent error based on the accuracy compared to the direct method. That error threshold is usually somewhere between 1 and 4%. So, depending on the modality, if you are measured at 30% body fat with a method that has plus or minus 4% error, your true body fat could really be anywhere between 26 and 34% body fat. And while this is somewhat disappointing, these assessment tools are great for tracking changes over time, so long as the machine and the technician are the same that are doing the measuring. The skill of the technician can also make a big difference in the measurement that is made in some instances. Some of the more expensive and laboratory-based methods include dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, or DEXA, hydrostatic or underwater weighing, air displacement plethysmography, or what is commonly known as the BOD-POD, skin fold measurements using skin fold pinches, bioelectrical impedance analysis using an electrical current, and even some advanced clinical methods like computerized tomography, or CT, or magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI. Now this may sound like a lot of jargon, but with each technique, we are able to assess body density through your body volume, like in water, with underwater weighing, or your body volume in air, like with the BOD-POD, or via some sort of imaging technique like DEXA, CT, or MRI, among others. Because many of these methods are difficult to actually perform, I'll keep this part of our discussion to methods that are a bit more common. For most of these tests, you can either ask your local gym personnel to administer them or search for a human performance or exercise science laboratory at a local college or university near you. First, hydrostatic weighing, also called underwater weighing, involves getting into a large tub of water, going underneath, and fully exhaling. Yes, I said fully exhaling. This is definitely uncomfortable. We typically hold our breath underwater to avoid drowning. But with underwater weighing, it's important to expel as much air from the lungs as possible to get an accurate measurement. This technique is based on Archimedes' principle, which states that an object immersed in fluid, in this case you in a water tank, loses an amount of weight that is equivalent to the weight of the fluid displaced by the object's volume. In plain English, when you go underwater, you displace water. By weighing you both underwater and on dry land, we can calculate your body volume and density. Because muscle is more dense than fat, those with more muscle mass will have a greater body density, and those with more fat will have less body density. Think about it. Those who have more fat are able to float more easily in the pool then those have more muscle mass. Ultimately, an equation using measured body density will estimate your body fat percentage. And hydrostatic weighing is often considered the gold standard for estimating body composition. However, the equations come with assumptions about sex, race, ethnicity, age, and lung volume. Ultimately, this technique is a great tool, but can be difficult to truly get an accurate measurement. And importantly, not everyone is agreeable to being dunked underwater with no breath. Well, to solve this problem, we use air displacement plethysmography, or ADP. Air displacement plethysmography uses something called the BOD and is another way to estimate body volume, but uses air displacement rather than water displacement. The BOD then relies on Boyle's law, which states that at a constant temperature, volume, and pressure are inversely related. So, just like with hydrostatic weighing, body volume is measured and then body density and body fat are estimated using standard calculations. And because you don't need to go underwater, many people find this technique more comfortable and accommodating. While these two methods are considered two-compartment models, that is, they measure fat mass and fat-free mass only, other models do exist that consider a three-compartment model: fat mass, fat-free mass, and bone mineral density. The most common way to assess the three-compartment model is through a technique called dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, or DEXA. You may have heard of this if your doctor ever wanted to check you for low bone mineral density or osteoporosis. This method is most often used in hospital settings or in research laboratories. To obtain this measure, you lie on a flat table as a scanning arm crosses above you to systematically image your body. And using a very low dose X-ray, about the amount you would get from a transatlantic flight, the DEXA calculates areas with more or less density, including your fat, muscle, and bone tissue. Other more complex, expensive methods include computed tomography, or CT, and magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, which you may often hear about for diagnostic imaging rather than measuring body composition. The two most commonly used techniques are the skin fold method and something called bioelectrical impedance analysis. The skin fold method of assessing body composition is practical and widely used. You may have come across this method at some point or another. A caliper, or a plastic or metal pincher, is used to pinch the fat underneath your skin at specific sites on your body. Many times, this method includes just 3 different sites. For women, this would be the back of your arm, your thigh, and your superilium, which is just above your hip on the outside of your body. For men, the pinches are taken at your chest, your abdomen, and your thigh. And ultimately, the percent body fat is calculated from your estimated body density using standard equations. Unfortunately, there may be considerable error using the skin fold method, depending on the type of skin fold caliper and the experience of the technician taking the measurements. But the most commonly used body composition analysis tool by gyms and clinics is something called bioelectrical impedance analysis. We actually use these in our lab from time to time, especially in field studies. You've probably seen these handheld devices that you hold on to like a steering wheel and grip both handles. There are also floor models that you stand on like a scale. And there are high-grade BIAs where you lie on your back with small electrodes attached to your hands and your feet. With bioelectrical impedance analysis technology, we use electricity to assess body composition. And because much of your body is comprised of water, and muscle mass is particularly high with water, almost 70%, an electrical current can pass through quite easily. Remember, water is conductive. On the other hand, fat contains little water and will blunt the electrical current, slowing down the signal. The BIA uses very low-level electrical current. You can't even feel it, and usually just 2 points of contact. Within the handheld model, this would run from your left hand to your right hand. And based on the relative amounts of fat and muscle you have, the BIA will calculate the speed of the current and ultimately estimate fat-free mass and fat mass. Great. Easy, right? Well, because this tool relies on total body water, you'd be right in thinking that your hydration status, or how much water you've had to drink, will influence the results of this measurement. In practice, the BIA tends to work well for most people to accurately gauge body fat levels, but it also may give very lean people a higher body fat measurement, or very obese people a lower value than anticipated. Therefore, if you fall at the extremes of either leanness or fatness, the BIA may not be the best modality for you. Nevertheless, this tool can be used to track body fat levels over time, so long as the same pre-testing protocol is followed. For example, eating and drinking habits should be similar before testing, and you need to know other facts such as activity level and alcohol consumption in the days prior, as both are known to influence hydration status. So, from this outline of testing modalities, we have a little more background on the complex measurement of body composition. Remember though, all of these methods can only estimate your relative fat and lean components. But just how much body fat you have is not the whole picture. It turns out that where you store your fat may be more important than how much fat you have. And typically fat is stored either around your abdomen in an apple shape called android fat, or around your hips and buttocks, the typical pear shape called gynoid fat. Now, depending on where you store your fat, you can often predict the risk of future health complications. The android or apple-shaped pattern of body fat indicates a lot of fat stored around your organs, which is called visceral fat, in addition to fat also underneath your skin, which is called subcutaneous fat. Think about it. Would you want a large mass of fat around all of your vital organs? Probably not. This fat distribution is much more common in men and is associated with more disease risk than the pear-shaped fat distributions. Specifically, a central or android fat distribution can increase the likelihood of narrowed artery walls, high blood pressure, and abnormal blood lipids, glucose, and insulin. The pear-shaped or gynoid fat deposition is typically thought of as the female pattern of weight gain. Now, this may actually be protective against disease for women. However, after menopause, when estrogen production tapers off, women tend to shift more towards the android obesity that is associated with men. This is really important. It shows us that it is not only how much fat we have that we need to care about, but also where we carry this fat. Because of this relationship, other measurements were developed to quickly and easily allow physicians to crudely estimate body composition, as well as to determine the risk based on where fat is located. And this measurement is called your waist to hip ratio and your waist and hip circumferences. As the name implies, the size of your waist, the smallest part of your abdomen, in relation to your hips, the greatest protrusion from the buttocks, carefully paint the picture of your fat distribution. There is a standardized set of values that can identify your risk based on both measurements. For example, your disease risk increases with a total waist circumference measurement of more than 35 inches, or 88.9 centimeters for women, and more than 40 inches, or 101.6 centimeters for men. And this is for just your waist, regardless of your hip circumference. Similarly, a waist-to-hip ratio of greater than 0.86 for women or greater than 0.95 for men indicates an increased risk for disease. The closer to 1 or above, meaning a bigger belly than buttocks, gives you the apple shape. In both cases, improvements in body composition are recommended to avoid the associated health problems. Just remember to place your measuring tape in the right place to get an accurate value. As one of my professors once told me, your waist is the first part of you that enters the room. All too often, I'll see people measuring their waists and hips after moving and shifting their fat around to try to get a healthier profile. While this is interesting to watch, it does you no favors to have an inaccurate measurement. Another way that body shape is often described is according to somatotype, or physique shape. The three clearly defined shapes include ectomorphs, like long-distance runners or basketball players who are naturally thin with longer limbs and smaller joints. Mesomorphs, who are naturally muscular with broad shoulders and narrow waists, like Serena Williams. And endomorphs, that are more round and soft with thicker joints, like Oprah Winfrey. Most people can identify with one of these categories, even if they are a hybrid or a mixture of two groups. Just keep in mind that the type of body shape you may naturally be hiding or morphed by years of beating up your body with excess calories, foods, or on the other hand, lots of dedicated exercise to change your body composition. Regardless, these body shapes are correlated with certain levels of fat mass and muscle mass. And knowing which category you fall into also can help set realistic goals for body composition and performance. Now, we need to spend a minute with one myth that persists around this topic, which is that muscle weighs more than fat. This myth is just like saying that 1 pound of bricks weighs more than 1 pound of feathers. Of course, if you have 1 pound of each, then they both weigh 1 pound. But here's the difference. Muscle has more density than fat. This is the key to understanding why two people can weigh exactly the same, at the same height, but look entirely different. Recall the underwater weighing method for measuring body composition. The more muscle mass someone has, the more dense they are, and the more they weigh underwater. However, the more fat mass someone has, the less dense they are, and the more likely they are to float in water. Let's take a look at 5 pounds of fat and 5 pounds of muscle. Now, they weigh exactly the same, but the amount of muscle is smaller than the same amount of fat. The muscle is about 1/3 or half smaller than the fat because of its increased density. This explains why my research participant needed to tighten her belt, despite seeing no change in her body weight. So, don't be fooled by this myth any longer. When you add muscle, you might weigh the same, but you could look entirely different. Now you know the difference between body composition and weight. You also know that your body composition is a far better indicator of health, success, and even performance than simply body weight measured on your bathroom scale. So start here. Take a good self-inventory. Do you feel healthy? Are you ever gasping for breath after activities that you used to do easily? Do you have any noticeable android or central fat levels? Has your doctor told you of any health issues due to excess body fat? Answer these questions and then work to set challenging but realistic goals. For a very active person, the goal could be to complete a 10K or half marathon race, or maybe to be able to set a number of unassisted push-ups or pull-ups. For these sorts of people, a lower percent body fat will be reasonable with their overall lifestyle. For others, the goal may be just to keep disease at bay, lose a small amount of weight, or to maintain exactly what you've got. Remember, the goal may not be the same as your best friend's. It will always be personal and specific to you. Now, once your goal is determined and you have a plan to get there with the help of a professional, then an ideal body fat level can be paired with that goal. In the coming lectures, you will learn some strategies to begin taking on goals like this. You will also learn about how foods are digested and absorbed to ultimately provide energy, and how they can be manipulated to improve your body composition. Try this. Find your starting point and work with a fitness professional to have your body fat percent measured.